Hey everybody, welcome back to World History Class with Mr. Finn. Today we are going to take a look, kind of a historical timeline of events for the Islamic Empire and talk quickly about kind of how it goes for them. If you remember last time we were looking at Islamic expansionism, they were going across North Africa, they had gone into Spain, the Battle of Tours around 730, I believe it was. They are going to be stopped at the Battle of Tours as far as Europe is concerned. But now let's take a look at the actual Islamic Empire itself. If you remember, I have it up here again, the Umayyad dynasty had started, and this made it so that there was a family of rulers, a dynasty, meaning that it was hereditary, father to son to family members are going to rule over this empire. So again, this is a dynasty, which is not uncommon. We've seen dynasties in Egypt and other places, so that's normal. So here's what happens. The Umayyad dynasty, when they took over areas, they would allow people to have their freedoms. They could practice different religions. They could, do their different things, kind of like the Roman Empire when they would take over areas and allow people to continue living their own life. There were so many religions that people could take part in the Roman Empire. The Umayyad dynasty was kind of the same way. Very lenient to other people, did not take over a place and say, you must do this and you must do that. However, they were the rulers when they did take over. So what you're going to find with the Umayyad dynasty is people are not going to be excited about them being the rulers because they would favor Arab Muslims. Now, if you remember, the Umayyad dynasty, I'm going to put that right here. They favored Arab Muslims. Now, what's that mean? Well, if you were an Arab, you were from the Arabian Peninsula. However, Islam is a religion. So technically, I could be a Muslim, right? But I wouldn't be an Arab Muslim. I would be, I guess, an American Muslim or a United States, of America Muslim. However you would put that. But the point is, I'm not from the peninsula, the Arabian Peninsula, so I'm not an Arab Muslim. And what the Umayyad dynasty did is they favored the Arab Muslims for like positions in political positions, for government, for different jobs, the better paying jobs, all those things. Arab Muslims would get it. And if I was living in an area that they took over and I decided to become a Muslim, I'd say, yo, everyone who's got everything is an Arab Muslim and I got nothing. That is not fair on a political scale or like in a real world scale. That is not fair. And so what you're going to see is a lot of people get upset with the way that the Umayyad dynasty is controlling things or how they're doing things. And there's going to be an uprising. This uprising, I don't have a lot of the information about the uprising there because it's not as important. But if you remember, we talked early on after Muhammad, he had a son-in-law, Ali, who was the caliph for a little bit. He was assassinated. And so there was the son of Ali who was the son-in-law of Muhammad. So it's a kind of complicated thing. However, he leads a force against the Umayyad dynasty forces. He gets destroyed. However, people who followed the son of Ali, whose name was Hussein, are going to will only believe in the son of Ali, Hussein, and his descendants should be the people who are in charge, whereas the other group still remains loyal to the Umayyad dynasty. So let me tell you which one is which. There's Sunni and there's Shiites. Sunni, right under Umayyad, follow there. Follow the Umayyad dynasty still. Follow their rulers. Everything is fine there. The Shiites are going to be a new denomination, I guess, sect, a new group. We'll put it there for the best term for us, of a new group of Muslims. A lot of religions have splinters and different groups that break away. So Shiite Muslims and Sunni Muslims would both agree, hey, we love Muhammad, he was the prophet, everything was true. However, the difference is Shiite Muslims are going to be people who believe that Hussein, the son of Ali, should be the person who was in charge. And the Sunnis are going to say, hey, we're still in line with the Umayyad dynasty. So the numbers are pretty skewed. It is something like 90% of Muslims are Sunni, and they remained, following the same path here, which means under 10% are Shiite Muslims, which belong to this new group. Now, but there's a split. So that there is this. So if you talk to Muslims today, more than likely, percentages would tell you they would be Sunni. However, certain countries in the Middle East are primarily Shiite Muslims. Now, the Umayyad dynasty goes on, but it still has the same problem. It's still favoring these Arab Muslims, and eventually the Abbasid dynasty is going to begin. I think I have it here. Yeah. This is in like 76. I can give you the exact date. Why not? Because I saw it right in front of me. 762 AD. This is a new dynasty. This new dynasty is going to go until around 1200 AD. So it's going to last a long time, and that's good. And they're going to be a little more fair. They're going to move the capital like a little bit further east, which is good because it's going to take away from a lot of the fighting that takes place until we get to the year really 1096, I believe it is, when we see the first of the Crusades, which we're going to touch on right now, but we're going to touch on it again when we get to Europe, so I'm going to give you a little bit of information. So that's basically a breakdown of the Islamic empire. However, let's look at some of the challenges that they have. The Byzantine Empire, the Mongols. These are groups of people who are going to pose a threat to the Islamic empire here. So you can always pause if you go back and get this stuff. So just to give me some room and for it to look a little more normal. So quickly, because we're going to talk a lot about the Byzantine Empire as well. The Byzantine Empire, for your thoughts, should just be this. This is the old Eastern Roman Empire. So, if you remember, we had Constantine who put an eastern capital in Constantinople. Well, after the West falls and Rome falls and the western half of the empire falls, the eastern half of the empire continues on. I know I've told you this already. But it is now under a new name. It has a capital city of Constantinople, which is the same Constantinople that was part of the Eastern Roman Empire. And it really just is the old Eastern Roman Empire. In fact, a lot of the people who lived in the Byzantine Empire would have considered themselves Roman. And so, this is in the East. Muhammad was in the Middle East, a little bit further east, but they are right next to each other. They are going to have constant battles with each other. The Byzantine Empire and the Islamic Empire are going to have constant fighting. In fact, the Byzantine Empire is going to be Christian because, again, it is the old Roman Empire, and that's the way it was. So what we're going to see, just to give you a little bit of a sneak peek, is we're going to have a Christian emperor. We're still going to have an emperor here. And then we're going to get these things called Crusades. Crusades are a holy war. And in this holy war, we're talking Christians versus Muslims, or Christianity versus Islam. And it is brought on by the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and the emperor calls for this. Because basically what happens is this. The emperor is feeling threatened by this new empire in the East, and he says, listen, who can I turn to help me with this problem? And so he calls for this crusade. He says, all Christians across Europe, please come to our aid. The Pope says anyone who fights and dies in this cause, this crusades, this holy war, is automatically going to go to heaven, which for these people at the time, remember, we haven't really got to it, but I did say this. Religion was the number one thing in their life. It was like the only thing they had. And if someone was like, hey, if you go fight, you're guaranteed to go to heaven, you were like, I want to go to heaven. Plus, this is a time called the Dark Ages, which I'll explain when we get there. But this would have been a big perk for people in Europe to get into heaven. And so the Byzantine Empire is going to begin these crusades. Europe is going to send tons of people to the Middle East to fight the Muslims, and we have this terrible battle taking place over a period of years too. Like, so these crusades started, and I believe it was 1096, but they go all the way into, like, let's just say mid 1200s. The first ones being the major ones, but there's like, 3 big crusades, but all told overall there was like 9 different crusades. So it was like just constant waves of Europeans going to the Middle East and attacking the Muslims, and it really changes nothing in the end. We'll talk about how the Crusades go back and forth when we get to the Crusades, but what is important to understand is that we are still, for centuries after this, going to have major distrust between Christians and Muslims. All stemming back to these crusades where Europeans were fighting the Muslims in the Middle East. And so we will still have those problems. And that's a big deal. But even worse than that are the Mongols. Because in the idea of the crusades, and again, we will get to it, but just quickly, the idea of the crusades is that Christians were like, hey, wait a second, Muslims are in control of Jerusalem. That is where Jesus was. We should be in control of that. And so they were going to reconquer the area. Mongols are going to be different. Mongols use terror tactics. Now, what are terror tactics? Well, terror tactics are, first let me start with the Muslims. The Mongols. Mongols are from Central Asia. They are known for their horse riding ability. They had a gigantic empire, but they were nomadic people and could move around and go from place to place. They would conquer people quickly because of their ability in war and then bring them into the army. So Mongols are a major fighting force who attack quickly, who can come in on horseback and get out and do all these things. And they use terror tactics, and those are when you come into an area and basically destroy everything. Destroy schools and homes and buildings and mosques. And I don't know if that was a definition that we used or not yet. I'll put it up here just so we have it. I'll even say right here, destroy mosques. Then I'll tell you, mosques. Mosques are what it would be like the equivalent of a church for Christianity. It's I guess house of worship is what a mosque is. So it'd be a very holy place. It's a place where you go to do your prayers and everything like that. But destroy irrigation canals and dams and roads and bridges and everything. Mongols do this. Mongols come in, they fly in, they attack, they kill everything, they destroy everything. They make it so that you are scared of it, scared of them. They can conquer you. You become a slave to them. They're actually going to be the ones who are going to be primary in ending the Abbasid dynasty. But what you're looking at, just to give you an idea now, is as we get away from this, we're going to see kind of everyone settling in around this time period, around 1250. We kind of don't see a lot of conflict past this between different groups that we've talked about. So the Mongols will be, where the Mongols are. It's not like the Mongols or the Byzantine Empire destroy the Muslims. And the Islamic Empire still remains. Christians are living in Europe, and that remains. And like I just said, the Mongols are in Eastern Europe. So by the time we're getting here, we have seen, although I don't want to short sell this here, this is basically, let's look at the year 700 to what I just said, 1250, of conflict. That's a lot of years of conflict between these different groups. By the time we get to here again, we've kind of settled in, people are in existence. Muslims are going to be here. The Islamic Empire is going to be there in the Middle East. Christians are going to be here. They're not going anywhere. The Mongols, there's a country called Mongolia. The Mongols are there. They're out there. People are just kind of where they're at now. These civilizations exist, and we'll talk a little bit more. We're going to get into the Byzantine Empire because we haven't just talked about it yet. But this is kind of where we're at, time period wise. We're going to take a jump back in time, back to like 500 AD, to get into the story of what happened in Europe after the fall of the western half of the Roman Empire. But first, before that, we're going to talk a little bit more about like the culture of Islam before we get into that. So on that note, let's look at the Mongols. Mongols are kind of an odd group here. Give me, for your assignment today, we'll keep it short since you have a lot of notes and you guys have been doing a lot of work, and that's good. Let me give that so I can do this. Mongols. Let's just give me 4 facts about the Mongols. Look up some stuff. 5 facts, or 4 facts. I even took one off. Your lucky day. 4 facts about the Mongols. Go ahead and look it up, see what they're about. Look into them, because we are not going to get back to the Mongols, but we are going to go to the Byzantine Empire. So take this time to take a look at the Mongols. Turn that in today for participation and attendance purposes. And that's the news. All right, I will see you next class.